Welcome back. Today we are going to go in depth on the CJ8 you've seen on our socials before. Today is the full around look of this awesome build. This customer got a hold of us and he basically wanted a super rad CJ8, wanted us to build something at the top quality of what we're able to do. And he wanted to send his CJ8 up here and have us go through it. And as we started talking about the plans of the Jeep, we quickly realized that I don't need his CJ8. Nothing of that is really gonna be used. So what we ended up doing is he kept his CJ8, nice Jeep, and we started ordering parts. So nothing here began as a Jeep. This is all pretty much fabricated and built as a one-off custom vehicle, and let's get to it. Obviously we don't have a Jeep to start with, so I don't need the Jeep, so we ordered a bunch of parts. We decided that we were gonna use the 7.3 Godzilla motor. We ordered a transmission, a wiring harness. We ordered diffs, we ordered shocks, we ordered a tub from Aqualoo. We just started getting the meat and potatoes of parts we were gonna need to build this thing. And basically that was wheels, tires, axles, joints for suspension, coilovers, T-case, transmission, engine, harness, radiator, a bunch of these parts we can just order and we don't really need to do a lot till we get all that stuff. So once all that stuff arrived, it was time for frame rails and start setting up the chassis. So once all the parts arrived, it was time to kind of lay out the first parts of it, which was frame rails, suspension design, axles, and get the wheelbase set, stuff like that. And that of course then comes into the fabrication area, Hazard Fab, and you guys have seen them before. Dylan Craft, Dilly, Tackle Box, lots of nicknames over the year. He's been here going on 13 years now. Yep. And he's the guy that makes all this cool stuff happen. Welder, fabricator extraordinaire. So pretty much all of this is his handiwork, and let's get to it. With everything laid out, we can start our suspension geometry in the subframe. So what we have is this kind of boat-sided one-piece subframe. It houses the upper rear links, the lower rear links, and then of course the single front upper link and the front lower links. A couple things we do different here is not only is our in-house geometry works great, but we also do these bent links. You'll see them how this link actually comes. It has a bend halfway through. We put that right at about where the tire crests. So as this tire is drooped out and you're coming up to roll over a rock, the link isn't hung down here and in the way and hitting the rock before the tire. It's up out of the way so the tire can get on the rock. We did that on my Jeep and a bunch of Jeep since, and it's proven very awesome, especially for rock crawling, Johnson Valley, Moab type stuff where you're having these big breakovers. You're never on the links. Also, these links have shorter straight pieces in them, and so they don't tend to bend, whereas these long straight links, often if you're bumping up an obstacle, will hit the obstacle and bend. You know, we end up with bent links anyway, so we just make them pre-bent, build that into our geometry, clearances on the frame, stuff like that, so it can all cycle. But that's a big benefit. The fronts are bent up and out for tire clearance, so we get full steer on the 40s. As we set up the front steering geometry, you know, the rear is a triangulated 4-link, the front is a 3-link with a track bar. We're gonna retain a steering box in this thing. We do wanna make it drivable down the road. We hit a JK steering box with a forward-facing pitman arm back behind the grill simply because we didn't want the look of the steering box out in front of the grill. They're kind of hard to package, but it works really good. And then our goal here is flat drag link and track bar at ride height with about 5 inches of up travel. So as you can see, the frame is notched out for those, and this is close to full bump. They're going up towards the passenger side. So at ride height, everything will be flat. That's gonna give us, you know, no bump steer. It's gonna give it really great road characteristics. Since we built these axles, we're able to put a lot of caster in it and work that all together to make everything work really well. So the rear diff is the same as the front in the fact that it's a trail gear 9-inch housing with their outers, the Willwood brake stuff. It's got the Nitro Gear billet 10-inch. It's got 543 gears and an ARB. It's our triangulated 4-link with our bent lower links. It's got a Curry anti-rock in the rear. We ran all 1350 drive lines in this, connected to that Atlas transfer case. Went with Fox 2.5-inch coilovers with adjusters, and then back in the back we have a Gen Right tank that's cut out for the rear diff but not needed since this is a CJ8 and we have so much room. But they make a good tank and a good skid, so that's why we chose that. Lower subframe here, we have adjustable upper link geometry, our lower links, and then the whole thing has an aluminum flat belly. That will get UHMW on it. It's also removable, and the whole everything stays in the chassis, so everything's very serviceable. We can pull a few bolts, pull this thing out of there, service everything underneath. What we use for our motor mounts and transfer case mounts are DDBs. A lot of people have gone to this joint. It's kind of like a flex joint, but it's all rubber encapsulated. We're underneath here, you're going to see that we have these heat-treated chromoly diff skids on it. So since we have the aluminum differentials, steel housings, we went with these heat-treated chromoly diff skids from Curry that we modify to go on here. So they fit the shape of the housing, but they also protect the bottom of the diff and the pinion yoke and the drive line. Another thing about the links that we do here at Hazard Fab is we have one of the Synergy DDBs at one end welded into the link. And as you come, you have the bend and the gusset to support that. As you go to the other end, we use the Synergy double adjuster, which what that gives us is the ability to adjust the link and not have to rotate it. And since they're bent, like often, you know, a trailing arm or something like that, they'd want to flop if they had joints on each end. So we have a hard welded joint on one end. The other side is a double adjuster, allowing us to do minute adjustments to get this thing perfectly square once it gets on the alignment rack, but also ease of modification and keeps everything from wanting to move around. As we move up from the frame, we're going to talk about a little bit about the body armor that we're doing on this. It's not going super elaborate with body armor because it's a 1/4 inch aluminum tub from Aqualoo, and the way we've done kind of the armor is to kind of keep you off the tub if you're wheeling it. So we have this rear bumper that wraps around the side, does stick out just a touch. Going to keep you off of the corner mostly, but the tire sticks out so far that you're going to have to be pretty screwed up to get the back of the tub. And if you do, it's 1/4 inch aluminum, not the end of the world. So as we come around the side of the Jeep, we ordered a set of Generite front fenders. No sense in reinventing the wheel on that. And then a rear flare that we will end up extending a little bit to fit the tire opening. Those are also thick aluminum. Those will keep you off the body if needed, but the tire sticks out so far, we don't intend to be on those much. As we come forward, we have our own rock sliders. We call them dilly bars after Dylan, of course. We've done a lot of these over the years. So we end up with a 2x3 box tube underneath the body where it's going to take the blunt of the hits, the tube to keep you off of it. We kind of roll that up, little boat side look. But what we did in these, which is really cool, is we incorporated the mounts for not only the roll cage to the frame, but all the body mounts for the tub are incorporated into the rock sliders, which if you can see here, we have access holes to get to those, and then drainage holes for water and stuff that gets in there. So we have 3 body mounts that are actually off the frame, but they're actually doubling as rock slider mounts to the chassis, cage mounts and everything. So all fabricated, boxed in, super strong, but all integrated, keeping it up high clearance. On the front, we took the frame rails. They were long to begin with, and what we decided to do was we wanted the winch down low, out of the way to the cooling package. So at the bottom of the frame rail is the winch mount, tucked it back as close as we could to the grill mount, and then just kind of fabricated this little tight little bumper from there, little tube, little light, toe points, stuff like that, just to make it nice and clean. But it doesn't need to be a focal point, but it's nice and clean and out of the way. It keeps the winch low. 7.3 liters of Ford are going to need a lot of cooling. So our goal here is to be able to drive this thing on a 100-degree day and not have any issues. Once we got the powertrain in here, of course, we did a Griffin radiator, electric fans. I've had great luck with those, cooling a bunch of different packages. They flow a lot of water, which has really worked out good for us. So we got that set in the CJ grill. This Jeep is going to have AC, so we got a tranny cooler, AC condenser up there. And as we move back, we have the Godzilla motor. We have the whole pulley assembly. But there's different things from an LS and the Godzilla, similar in a lot of ways. But so the goal down the road, I think, is to put a blower on this. So we tried to leave room for that with our shock hoop tie-in. Dylan fabricated this, it's pretty cool. Big shock hoops to keep everything out of the way. Inner fender liners are getting all dialed in. Another thing on this is we are using vacuum assist brakes. So not only do we have the big Willwood brakes and calipers, but we're also using vacuum assist. And I have that on my Jeep, and I have more brakes than you could ever use. If you think about the brakes, you're skidding all 4 tires on the highway, so you got to be real careful because it's almost too much brakes. But when you get in the rocks, it's the coolest thing ever because no matter what, tires are locked. I really like it. You just got to be a little cautious because most vehicles don't have enough brakes, and this will end up with way more than enough brakes. So looking forward to that, and that's always a welcomed asset. So from there we kind of go to the air intake that we just did some stuff on, but I'll let Dylan talk about that a little bit.
We wanted to come up with an idea for the air filter. Normally they're just all hanging up here, sometimes not getting much airflow. And so we wanted to kind of find a nice home for it where it's going to get a lot of fresh air, which these Gen-Rights have this nice little perforated access point. And so we actually combined the ARB air compressor and the air filter housing right in here. And so we went with this nice aluminum intake tube that comes and carries all the way back here, but I wanted to box it in so it's got a couple of panels that actually detached from everything, but then we also have this access door right here, so you just pump a couple of these button heads and you can pull the filter out and service everything and check on it. So yeah.
With the air box, that was kind of our start of tin work on this project. So a few things left, challenges. We still have to sort out exhaust. There's room for it, but it's tight like it always is. So we have that to sort out. And then we're pretty much on to tin work on this thing, which this will get a full aluminum interior, custom one-off dash. It's getting the Holley 12-inch screen to control everything. So instead of a normal gauge cluster to have a big digital screen. So we're going to incorporate that into the dash and make a pretty trick dash that rolls into the center console, cup holders, shifter, transfer case shifters, all that kind of stuff. So we have some first rendition cardboard templates, but to kind of get us an idea and figure out how all the paneling is going to go together, where bead rolls go, where they don't go, how everything's going to be accessible and serviceable, stuff like that. I know the colors are just about right, but from the seats, it's not supposed to match the cardboard, but currently it does. We call this CAD. Some people would say that's drawing stuff on a computer. We call it cardboard aided design. And this kind of gives us a view of how everything's going to go, give us some dimensions before Dylan draws stuff on the computer. So this is the poor man's CAD here, cardboard aided design. But we did go with PRP seats in this. These are reclinable, heated. We got some really cool custom mounts Dylan did. They still have seat sliders. Our goal is to make this thing comfortable that you can actually drive it and spend the day in it and not feel like you got to go get in the hot tub. So shifter will be in a comfortable spot. We'll design the console around basically the transmission shifter, and we'll do a switch pros over here that'll control everything. So we're really looking forward to this. It's going to be cool to kind of set up the interior. I'm sure we'll have lots more videos on that. The back is going to be left fairly open, room for a lot of storage, but we did have to change a lot of things on this because we're building the thing so low and the tires tuck so high. We had to build new wheel tubs that come all the way almost to the top of the tub. So we fabricated these, welded those in, but it still gives us, since it's a scrambler, we got all this room for stuff. So I'm sure he'll have fridge freezers and all his stuff. I mean, there's a ton of room back here. So we'll leave it fairly open, and it'll get coated and stuff like that, whether we do rhino lining or carpet or something like that. So cage we did similar to some we've done before, but kind of put our own spin on it. Since it's a scrambler, the back's a little longer, and we're building everything and making sure everything's tied into the frame. It's kind of got that fastback cage look, but we also made it real strong. It's got the big pronounced V in the windshield, kind of one of our signature deals on our cages. Different things where we're distributing load, lots of gussets, stuff like that to keep this thing nice and safe for when it rolls over. The goal with this thing is to actually use it hard and do beat on it, and anything we're beating on always gets rolled. So that's not the plan, but it always happens. We want to make sure everybody's safe. So this will have everything will be tied to the frame, very safe cage, lots of triangulation, lots of gussets. Load is distributed through the chassis correctly. So looking forward to that. It's got a cool look to it, and I'm sure there'll be more to come as we add on to the cage, as we do little things, dome lights and stereos and all those little knickknacks that really set the Jeep apart, storage solutions, stuff like that. So last but not least, you know how I love to talk about wheels and tires. So we have KMC beadlock. We went with this wheel that kind of gives it this old school look, all machined. I love the look of that. I'm not a black wheel guy. I'm super over them. Then of course we have Nitto tires on this. We've talked about them a lot before, but I got to reiterate, a spiral wound tire goes incredibly well down the road. It's 40 inches tall. It's still quiet even with the aggressive tread, but at 80 miles an hour, this thing is perfectly smooth. These will take a touch of weight, but you're really balancing the wheel. This tire's balanced when it comes out of the factory, and time after time again, we get people that have brand A tires or whatever, and they got vibration issues, steering wheel wobble. We put niddles on it, and they go smooth as glass down the road, quiet. I love them. If you're fighting any of those issues with your rig and you want to drive it on the road, put niddles on it. Remember, you can do everything in the world to your truck, but there's only 4 things touching the ground. I can build you the coolest truck in the world. You put cheap tires on it, and that's all you're gonna get. So 4 things touching the ground. Big niddle fans over here, and for good reason. That's the meat and potatoes on the CJ8. There's a ton more where this came from. There's tons of these cool trucks around here all the time. So stay tuned for more info on this build, as well as all the other ones we always got going on in the shop.